Supreme Court in the spotlight. Major decisions reshape immigration, rights, and executive power. April 2025 full report. The U.S. Supreme Court has recently handed down several high-impact decisions and signaled its direction on a series of major upcoming cases. These rulings focus largely on immigration law, constitutional rights, and executive authority, have drawn national attention for their scope and implications. Revolving Light 1. Deportation of Venezuelan migrants blocked under 18th century law and a dramatic intervention. The Supreme Court has temporarily halted the Biden administration's effort to deport hundreds of Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act, a statute dating back to 1798, originally designed for wartime threats. What happened? The administration had cited the law to deport Venezuelans housed in Texas's Bluebonnet Detention Center, claiming they posed national security risks. Advocacy groups, including the ACLU, filed an emergency appeal, arguing due process was being violated, especially as deportation orders were issued in English to detainees who primarily spoke Spanish. The court's unsigned order did not elaborate on the rationale but sent a strong signal that constitutional safeguards must still be respected. Why it matters. This decision may significantly limit executive leeway in applying obscure or wartime-era laws in modern immigration contexts. It also sets a precedent for challenges to detention procedures lacking transparency or fairness. Receipt 2. Supreme Court orders return of wrongfully deported Maryland man. In another headline-making move, the court unanimously ruled that the federal government must actively facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident deported in defiance of prior court orders. Balance scale key points. Garcia, who had been in the U.S. for over a decade, was deported to El Salvador despite an open asylum case. The court found the government had shown deliberate indifference to due process. Judge Harvey Wilkinson III condemned the administration's failure to comply with judicial orders, writing, "The Constitution does not end at the gate of a deportation center." Globe broader impact. The case illustrates growing judicial frustration with executive overreach in immigration enforcement and reaffirms the authority of the judiciary to enforce compliance, even against federal agencies. Supreme Court signals future rulings on citizenship and religious freedom. Pushpin upcoming cases include birthright citizenship challenge. The court has agreed to hear arguments regarding the Trump-era attempt to limit birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants. A potential reversal of the 14th Amendment's interpretation could fundamentally reshape the definition of American citizenship. Medicaid and Planned Parenthood justices will consider whether states can bar Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid reimbursements, a case that pits state rights against federal healthcare mandates. Religious rights in the workplace. Catholic Charities has challenged state rules requiring them to hire employees outside their faith for secular roles. The court appears inclined to expand protections for religious organizations, possibly weakening anti-discrimination laws. Public response and political repercussions. Civil rights groups have praised the court's defense of due process in the deportation cases. Immigration hardliners, however, have criticized the rulings as judicial activism that undermines national security. The Biden administration is now under pressure to revise its immigration enforcement strategy to align with evolving judicial scrutiny. Legal experts weigh in. Professor Angela Williams, constitutional law scholar at Columbia University. This term has seen the court asserting its role as a check on executive power in a big way, especially when it comes to immigration and civil liberties. Miguel Ramirez, human rights attorney. For once, we are seeing real accountability for wrongful deportations. These rulings are a lifeline for people who were cast aside by a broken system. With more landmark decisions on the horizon, the Supreme Court continues to define the limits of government power and the scope of individual rights. As immigration, healthcare, and religious freedom dominate the docket, the court's influence on American society is arguably at its most consequential in decades.